أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Inshallah, today we will start our study from ayat number 19, Surah anNisa. As we already know that Surah anNisa covers some of the family laws in Islam according to the Sharia, and also protects the rights of women and orphan and other people who were considered weak in that time in the society, and they were not given their rights. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights their rights over here. In the previous lesson, we studied about the permission, or actually the cap that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts on the men for their marriages, which are four. There's a huge propaganda according to like the Western world, that Islam gives permission for four marriages. Actually, the thing is that Islam actually puts the upper limit to that, and also makes men more accountable about being just to their wives. Before that, there was no questions asked. They could marry as many women as they wanted and treat them however way they wanted. So Alhamdulillah, we already studied that. Today also the topic is related to marriages. That we will study that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a list of women that a man can marry and those that he is not allowed to marry according to the Sharia. Besides that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasizes a lot on the mahr, the dowry, the gift that the husband is supposed to give to the wife at the time of marriage. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that this is a command from Allah. Let's start ayat number 19 and we'll inshallah do the tafsir as we go. There are four parts kind of in ayat number 19. The first part is Ya ayyuhal lazina amanu, O people who believe. Basically the believing men, O believers. La, not yahillu, ha lam lam, halal. So it is not halal lakum for you. What is not halal for you? An, that tarisu wa that you inherit, anNisa karha, the women forcefully. Karha means with force. So this is the first part. The first part talks about what we've already kind of touched, this topic, that the sons used to inherit. When they would inherit other things at the death of their father, the stepmothers were also divided among the stepsons. So among the sons of the deceased person, they were treated like property. They were treated like pieces of furniture. And also it wasn't just always the sons who would inherit these stepmoms, but there would also be brothers of the deceased person, or even friends. They would just come and start dominating the women of the house and start telling them that they have to do how they decide. So they were not given any choice in making their decision related to their life, related to their children, related to what they want to do with the rest of their life, or if they were wealthy and they had businesses, or if they had any property or land. So these men would start deciding on their behalf. Among those decisions would also be if they would want to marry them, if they would like them, they would marry without even giving the women a choice if they want to marry or not. And also other decisions related to the widow's children, especially the daughters, and also related to things that she had that belonged to her. Even like if she had land, they would start, I mean, this would be the basic reason why would they force her into this marriage or staying with them, or any decisions, so they could have things that belong to them and use them and benefit from them. For example, if she would have a piece of land, if the woman would stay under him, whether it was with marriage, or he would apparently say that I'm the caretaker of this house now because you're my brother's wife, or my friend's wife, and I'm supposed to take care of you. So they would use that land and keep the profits, and also if she would have any cattle that she has inherited. So basically they would not give them things that they have inherited, kind of keep those things and make decisions based on that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly tells us over here that this whole thing, it is haram. You're not supposed to do that. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to inherit them and make decisions on their behalf. You're not allowed to oppress them and, dominate them. And then the second part of ayat number 19 is wala, and not ta'adulu hunna ain dwadla, meaning to constrain, to make things difficult for hunna, for them, litazhabu, so that you may zahab, zalhaba, bibadi, a part ma of what ataytumuhunna, that you have given to them. What is happening over here is that this is also related to the old times, but also sadly very very part of our culture too. That we've already studied, right, that when a husband divorces a woman, the wife, then he's not allowed to take the gifts and the dowry that he has given to the woman. But if the woman demands the divorce, then she will have to let go of the dowry and the gifts, and whatever of the gifts is left, then she has to kind of buy the divorce. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions over here that do not mistreat them to make them return some of the dowry as a ransom of divorce. In a very mean way, the husband can manipulate the woman, like basically if he is not interested in her, for example, and he is treating her really badly. Why? Because he does not want to give her divorce, but he wants that if she has any problem with this kind of treatment, of course if she's not treated well, a woman, she would want to get out of that relationship whatever it costs her. So this is how the men would make sure that the money or the property or dowry, whatever they've spent on her, that would come back. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions over here, which means that this will be, Allah knows everything, right? And we can see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded the men over here that do not do this. So he will get punished if he still thinks that nobody's looking and nobody's finding out, and I'm just doing it in such a natural way that it is her. People can see that she wants to leave me. Today also we see lots and lots of families, lots and lots of girls. The husband makes them miserable, and then when it is time, when the woman wants to get a divorce, he would not give the divorce, and then she would want to get khula and whatever it takes. And then connected to this returning the dowry or returning the gifts is illa, except what is one condition when it is justified to take the gifts back, and that yatina, they commit bifahishatin, the immorality, mubayyina, meaning openly. Bayanun is the root. So only one reason that is, it is okay that the men can take the gifts, although Islam does not really Islam condemns taking the gifts back, whether it is between the husband and wife or it is with anyone else. There's a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam where it is mentioned that demanding to get the gifts back that you've already given is like a dog which vomits and licks its vomit. So it's that disgusting. It's really, really a bad thing to do. But over here we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that okay, in one case it is okay, that illa, in case that woman, the wife, is committing fahisha, she is not a decent woman, she is into wrong things, she is into adultery, or it's something that she is doing openly. You cannot assume or slander her for things, but she is actually into shamelessness in these kinds of things, and in that case you have the right to divorce her and still demand the gifts. Then the third part is wa'ashiruhunna bil ma'ruf. So other than that, how are you supposed to live with your wife? You are supposed to live in a very kind manner. Ashiruhunna, the root is ashar, ain shin ra, meaning living, and bil ma'ruf, meaning in a kind, in a proper way, and established how people are supposed to live with kindness, with helping each other, talking nicely, using good words, helping in actions in this dunya and deen, as uplifting each other in these, and also spending on each other. So all three ways, meaning words and actions and spending. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions for in, and if كَرِهْتُمُوهُنَّ كَافْرَهَا, if you dislike them, فَعَسَى an takrahu, then perhaps you dislike shay'an, one thing, a thing, وَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ, when Allah makes fihi, in it, khairan kathira, in the relationship Allah will make khairan kathira, lots of khair, lots of blessings. So Allah mentions over here, basically the theme of this part is that do not be so fast in divorcing the woman, do not be so fast in treating her badly. If something really is there that you don't like about her, maybe she does not look as good physically now after having children, or if she stays irritated all the time, or if you feel that she's not educated enough, something is annoying you, bothering you, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala urges the person to live patiently, still keep on treating the wife nicely. And also this is the same for wives also, that they might have some issues with the husband, that he doesn't look so good, or he does not earn well, in my needs are also very barely we are able to eat and live and pay rent and all this, so she feels a lot of hardship. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala urges the people that if there is something that you don't like, then still keep on living patiently, still be nice to each other, respect each other, treat each other with kindness, because you never know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put lots of blessings in it. Because of your patience, Allah will fill the marriage with khairan kathir. Maybe you'll have a very obedient child who will become sadqa jariyah for you. Maybe you will earn huge rewards for the akhirah by living in a nice way, by treating each other well. So in this ayat we saw that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the men that it is haram to inherit or to try to pressure the women, to oppress them, especially when they are widows, and to make decisions for them forcefully. Also, it is not allowed for men to take the dowry or the gifts back from the women, except for when they are into fahisha. And then the spouses are told to live in a beautiful maruf manner. And if there is any problem, if there is anything that they dislike about each other, they should look at the positives of each other, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will add blessings in their life. Then the next ayat is also related to the same topic, wa in, and if aratum. So if you decide, because the last thing in ayat number 19 was that if something about the spouse you don't like, so it's kind of a continuation of that if you intend, aratum, the root is ra waw dal, what do you intend? Istibdala, that you badal, that you replace, badal lam is the root, zawjim makana zawjin, one wife for the in place of the other. Makan means in the place of. And wa'ataytum, and if you've given ihdahunna, one of them. Which one you've given? The one that you're about to divorce. If you've already given to her, what have you given to her? Qintaran, the heaps of gold, lots of treasures, lots of gifts. Fala, then do not ta'khuzu, take away, minhu, from it, shay'an, anything. You're not supposed to ask her to give you the money, give you the jewelry, give you the property, the land, whatever you've given to her, whatever you've spent on her. You cannot tell her that I don't like you anymore, I'm going to get married to this other woman, now I have to give her the gifts and I don't have money, so you have to return all the things. You cannot do that. And sadly, we see that this is happening in our culture too. Whether or not they are marrying another woman right away or not, the family, not just the husband, not just the ex-husband, but their entire family, they take each and everything that they have given to the ex-wife, whatever they have given. And that is so going against the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's written very clearly over here that if you are intending to replace your wife, then whatever even if you've given her heaps of gold, even if you've given her qintar, which is huge amounts of things, fala ta'khuzu minhu shay'a, then do not take anything from it. Ta'khuzunahu, are you going to take it buhtanan, by slandering, wa itman, and a sin, mubina, open. So what is the last part of ayat number 20 mentioned? It says that are you, because we've already discussed that that is the only one justified reason where you are still okay, allowed to take the gift from the wife that you're divorcing. How you can take it? By saying to the people that she is indecent, she's into adultery, or she is like into other men. And the people also put other kinds of blame. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, are you going to put blame on her? Are you going to slander her for something that she's not done, just so you can justify taking the stuff from her? So you look good in front of people, in front of society, in front of the family, and in front of your friends. So you look okay, and you can tell people, oh, she was a bad woman, so I had to get rid of her. And also, you don't look so bad by taking the gifts. So be very careful. This is a very common practice in our culture. Then ayat number 21, وَكَيْفَ, and how, تَأْخُذُونَهُ, could you take it? Hamza Khazal is the root. وَقَدْ, when surely, أَفْضَى, has gone, بَعْدُكُمْ إِلَى بَعْدٍ, one of you to another. You've been to one another means you have been intimate, you've been close to each other, you've met in private, you've consummated the marriage. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still talking about the mahar. You see, ayat number 19, ayat number 20, ayat number 21, everything is touching the topic that this is something that is not allowed. And this is exactly what we see happening everywhere in front of us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, and how could you take the gifts when surely you've gone to one another? وَأَخَذْنَا, and they have taken, Hamza Khazal, minkum, from you, misaqan ghaliza. Misaq is a covenant or a contract which is already very strong, and ghaliza is another word which emphasizes on the strength of this contract. And which is this contract? This is the nikah. After the nikah, you have gone to that person, you've met like each other, you've been with each other, so you've benefited from this marriage, you've lived your lives, you've lived the days together. How can you take the mahar, the gift that you've given to that person, how can you take it back? So this is, we can see from the tone of this ayat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not just commanding somebody, is not just suggesting that this should not be done. Allah is even asking that this is not okay at all. At no level you cannot do this. In the previous ayat also, Allah said, are you going to slander? Are you going to use illegal means? Are you going to use wrong means? Are you going to sin to be able to get the gifts back? And now Allah is asking, how can you even think about it? Now ayat number 22, wala, and do not, tankihu, marry, ma, whom, nakaha, married, aba'ukum, your fathers, min an-nisa'i, from the women. So don't marry the women who your father had already married, which I've already mentioned that at the death of the father, the stepsons used to divide the mothers, the women. Some of them they used to marry if they would like them, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends this system over here, that this tradition has to end because you're not allowed to, this is not halal that you marry the women that your fathers have married, illa, except ma qad salaf, except for what has passed before. Why was this said? It was said because many sahaba, many companions were extremely worried when this hukum came. When this command came, they came to Prophet ﷺ and asked him, what should we do now? Because some of us are born in such kind of marriages. So what should we do? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent this part of the ayat that whatever happened in the past, that is okay, but it should not be done anymore. Innahu kana, indeed it was fahishatan. It was an immorality. It was complete indecency. It was actually maktan, and hateful. It was disgusting. Wasa'a, and an evil, sabila, a way. So it was an evil way, evil thing to do. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that this was shameful, evil practice. Whatever was done previously, it is fine, but not anymore. Do not marry the former wives of your fathers. And now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a list of women that a person is not allowed to marry legally in Islam. And we see that this is the last ayat of juz number 4, but this list will continue on even in the first ayat of juz number 5. So we will also continue, inshallah. Let's read this list. Hurrimat, forbidden, harami, alaykum, to you, who are not allowed to you. Ummahatukum, your mothers. And when we say mothers, it is also the grandmothers, okay? Mother's mother and her mother. وَبَنَاتُكُمْ, and your daughters. So when we say daughters, it is also the daughter's daughter. Okay, so the granddaughters also. وَأَخْوَاتُكُمْ, and your sisters. وَعَمَّاتُكُمْ, and your father's sisters. You're not allowed to marry them. وَخَالَاتُكُمْ, and your mother's sisters. And who else you are not allowed to marry? وَبَنَاتُ الْأَخِي. Banat means daughter, akhi means brother. So your niece from your brother's side. وَبَنَاتُ الْأُخْتِ, and the daughter of your sisters. And the niece from your sister's side, you're not allowed to marry. وَأُمَّهَاتُكُمُ اللَّاتِي أَرْضَعْنَكُمْ, and the mother who nursed you. You're not allowed to marry. She is also your mother. وَأَخْوَاتُكُمْ مِنَ الرَّضَاعَةِ, and the sister from the nursing. So if another girl, she also nursed from the same woman, then she is your sister. You're not supposed to marry, you're not allowed to marry her. وَأَخْوَاتُكُمْ مِنَ الرَّضَاعَةِ. And then who else? وَأُمَّهَاتُ نِسَائِكُمْ. Ummahat, mother, and nisaikum, your wives. So the mother of your wife, any mother-in-law, a man is not allowed to marry her. وَرَبَائِبُكُمْ. And what is Rabiba? Baba, somebody, a girl that is raised in your house, but she's not your daughter, but raised in what way? That your wife, a person that you married, she had this daughter from another husband. So when you got married to a woman, then she brought her daughter and raised her in your house. But the detail comes right after that. Let me first explain to you. So this Rabiba, this girl is called Rabiba, one who's raised in your house. She's not your own daughter, but she is your wife's daughter. But you're only allowed to marry her if you did not consummate the marriage with this girl's mother. So you marry a woman, if you consummated the marriage with that woman, then you're not allowed to marry the Rabiba, the girl who was this wife's daughter. But if you did not, for example, you got into nikah, but you got divorced and you never consummated the marriage, and then you're allowed to marry her daughter as well. Okay, so this is the detail that is coming up next. Raba'ibukum, so your stepdaughters, allati who fi are in hujurikum, in your hijr, in your house, in your guardianship, min nisaikum, of your women. So one of your wife has this daughter, she is raised in your house. Allati whom dakhaltum, you had relations, bihinna, with them. So if you had the private time, if you had the consummated the marriage with this girl's mother, then you are not allowed to marry her. فَإِن, but if lam takunu, not you had dakhaltum, if you've not had relations, the word dakhal shows you that you've not entered her, bihinna, with them. Fala junaha, then there is no junah, there is no sin, alaykum, on you. So then in that case you are allowed to marry her. وَحَلَائِلُ, and the wives, abna'ikum, of your sons, allazina, those who, min, from, aslabikum, your sulb, your own son. So the wife who is from your own son, you are not allowed to. Remember, we were studying the list, right? Ummahatukum, banatukum, akhwatukum. So you are not allowed to marry the daughter-in-law, your son's wife. Which son? Son that is from your own sulb. Wa'an, and that, tajma'u, you gather together, bainal ukhtaini. What else is not allowed is that you gather together two sisters while they're alive. If one of them dies, then you can marry the other one, but you're not allowed to marry two sisters together. Just like in the times of Jahiliyyah, they would also marry like the sisters. If somebody died, then if they would have 3 daughters, they would marry all of them or something like that. So you're not allowed to do that. Illa except ma qad salaf, whatever happened before, like previously, that is okay now. Yani, again, the companions would be worried what to do if something like this happened in the past. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned whatever happened in the past, that is fine. Inna allaha, indeed Allah, kana, is ghafura rahima, is forgiving and is merciful. One more thing I want to add, that is we learned from the hadith, is that over here it mentions that you're not supposed to gather together two sisters. In the same way, a man is not supposed to gather together a niece and the aunt, right? From the aunt from both sides, the mother's side and the father's side. So a person is married to a girl and he cannot marry this girl's mother's sister or the father's sister, or as vice versa. So unless like one of them dies and then you marry the aunt. This list goes on, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in ayat number 24, wal muhsanatu, and who else you're not allowed to marry? Muhsanat. What is muhsanat? The root is haswa nun, which means fort, and it means a married woman. So somebody who is already married to another man, you're not allowed to marry that person. Minan nisa'i, of the women. Illa, except. In what case are married women allowed to be married? Ma malakat aymanukum, if you possess them rightfully, like if they were captives in your possession, which if after a battle they came as captives, they were married to other mushrikeen, your enemies, and then now they are captives. So I'm not going to dive too much into this topic about slaves and captives, because there's lots of informative lectures available if you want more details. Over here we are just going to stick to whatever is more relevant to our lives, and something that we can generally learn as a rule. Okay, so illa ma malakat aymanukum, except for when they are slaves. Kitab Allahi alaykum, when it is that kitab Allah, it means it is decreed, it is a command upon you from Allah. Wa uhilla, and are lawful, lakum, to you, ma wara'a, what is beyond, like whatever is beyond, zalikum, that. So whatever the list is given to you, everything beyond that is halal, but what is the condition? These are all the other women are halal upon you, but what should be the condition? And that tabtaghu, that you seek, bi amwalikum, with your wealth. So you make sure that you're doing proper nikah and giving wealth to them, giving dowry to them, giving mahar to them. Nikah without mahar is not valid. Okay? Muhsinina, desiring to be chaste, ghaira musafihina, and not lustful. So do not just go towards a woman to have your desires fulfilled and not having any vision of a nikah to live a life together. It should be a proper married life where you are willing to give the rights of the woman as well, not just to fulfill your lust. Famastamta'tum, so what you benefited, bihi, of it, minhunna, from them. Fa'atuhunna, so you give them, ujurahunna, their bridal due, farida, it is an obligation. So over here we see that one of the most important thing in nikah in Islam is the bridal due, which is the meher. Of course, there is no exact amount that is written. We have already studied that it has to be based on what the person's financial status is, and it should be given with love. It should not be given with anger. It should not be given after frustrating the women completely. So it should be taken as a loan. If the person dies, it has to be given. It cannot be just ignored. Okay, so this is one thing that is very important in nikah. And generally in Islamic nikah, most of the money that has to be spent is also from the groom's side, the walima or the dinner or whatever party. The scale, of course, depends on the financial status of the husband, but has to be spent from the husband's side. It's really unfortunate that we see completely opposite of all this in our culture. The dowry also comes from the woman's side, and the big celebrations and dresses and all these things are also the gifts to the groom's side, is also all coming from the bride side. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the last part of ayat number 24, wala junaha alaykum, there is no sin alaykum upon you fima concerning what taradaitum you mutually agree. So the mahr, it's perfectly fine. They can decide amongst themselves what should be the amount and when it should be given, because it could be given in two parts. A very small amount can be given at the time of marriage, but if the husband, for example, is a student, or if he does not have a very good job right now, and if he says that, okay, after 2 years when my degree finishes, then I'm going to get a better job and I'm going to pay the rest of the amount. So if the wife is fine with that, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions there is no sin upon you concerning what you mutually agree, bihi of it, min ba'dil farida, from beyond obligation. Inna Allah, indeed Allah, kana aliman hakima. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all knowing and all wise. And so generally what we studied in this ayat number 24 is that men, the married women, they are also forbidden except for the captives. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends this as a command, and other women are lawful as long as you seek them with wealth in a legal marriage, not in fornication. And you are supposed to give their dowries. This is also a farida, and it is permissible to be mutually gracious regarding to set dowry. Now we can see how much importance is given to the topic of meher, the dowry, the gift from the husband to the wife at the time of marriage, in all these ayats. And in the next ayat also, which we are actually going to study in the next lesson. But I just want to let you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the topic of meher in the sense that if somebody is not able to afford to give anything to the wife as meher, then who they are recommended to marry if they really want to get married at the time before they're financially very stable. So they are told, they are suggested to marry the Muslim slave girls, although they are not as properly groomed, as properly raised as the free girls who are raised in a proper family, in a respectable Muslim family. So, however, a man is allowed to get married to these slave girls in the case that they do not have a lot of wealth to give in meher, or they cannot afford a proper woman. Okay, so we'll study this ayat in detail. I just wanted to let you know that the next ayat also talks about meher. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu alayk.